My wife handed me divorce papers at my father's memorial service. Her exact words were, "This is probably the cleanest timing we'll ever get." I was still wearing my suit from the service. My hands were shaking. I signed them right there in the church parking lot. Everyone thinks I lost my mind. My sister called 3 times that night. My mom keeps leaving voicemails. Even my co-workers have been giving me concerned looks. I'm Kyle, 36, and I work as a middle school counselor in suburban Columbus. I make around $55,000 a year, which is apparently a problem. My wife Laura is a senior marketing manager at a regional retail chain. She pulls in about $140,000 plus bonuses. We've been married 3 years. The last year and a half has been rough. Laura kept pushing me to move into administration or leave education entirely. At family gatherings with her friends, I'd get these little comments. "You're still working in schools." Or, "Must be nice having summers off," with that specific tone that makes it clear they don't actually think it's nice at all. Laura would smile and change the subject, but she never defended me. Not once. My dad, Richard, passed away 2 weeks ago. Heart attack, sudden, no warning. He was 68. He'd been a logistics manager his whole career, quiet guy, really private about money. He had this saying he'd repeat whenever someone was rushing him into a decision. If someone rushes you, they're hiding something. The memorial was small. Dad wanted cremation, no big funeral. Maybe 40 people at the church, mostly his old colleagues and family. Simple service. Laura was on her phone through most of it. I noticed but didn't have energy to care. Afterward, we're walking to the car and Laura stops me. She pulls out this manila envelope from her bag. I actually thought it was some kind of sympathy card at first. Maybe something from her office. Then she says it. "This is probably the cleanest timing we'll ever get." I opened the envelope. Divorce papers. Already filled out. Already filed. She'd prepared everything in advance. I looked at her face, and I just knew. This wasn't a spontaneous decision. This wasn't about one fight or one bad month. She'd been planning this, maybe for months, and she chose today because I was already emotionally wrecked, already vulnerable, already too tired to fight back. So I signed them, right there. I had a pen in my jacket pocket from signing the memorial guest book. I used the hood of someone's car as a flat surface. Laura kept talking, something about how this was better for both of us, how we'd grown apart, how she hoped we could stay civil. I wasn't really listening. I just signed every place the little sticky tabs indicated and handed the papers back. She looked almost disappointed. I think she expected me to beg, to ask for another chance, to promise I'd get a better job or make more money, or finally become the person she wanted me to be. Instead, I just walked to my car and drove to my mom's house. Here's the part everyone keeps asking about. When Laura and I got married, my dad insisted we sign a prenuptial agreement. At the time, it seemed weird because I had basically nothing. Laura was already making good money, and I was fresh into my counseling position. The prenup was framed as protecting her assets since she was the higher earner. She actually seemed relieved about it. I didn't think much about it then, but now I keep remembering how specific my dad was about certain clauses, something about inheritances and trust distributions remaining separate property. At the time, I figured he was just being his usual careful self. He'd grown up without much, and he was always really particular about legal documents. So here's my question. Am I the jerk for signing divorce papers at my father's memorial without even trying to fight for my marriage? Everyone says I gave up too easily, that I should have asked for time, that I was in shock and not thinking clearly. Maybe they're right. But in that moment, standing in that parking lot still processing my dad's death, I just felt done. Like something broke, and I couldn't pretend to care about fixing it anymore. I don't know. Maybe I'll regret this. Maybe I just made the biggest mistake of my life. But watching Laura hand me those papers while I was grieving, all I could think about was my dad's voice. If someone rushes you, they're hiding something. Update 1. It's been 2 weeks since the memorial and things have moved fast. Laura asked me to be out of our rental house by the end of the month. She's being very efficient about the whole thing. Division of furniture, kitchen items, who gets which streaming service passwords. It's like she had a checklist prepared. I've been staying with my mom in my old bedroom. She doesn't ask questions, just makes coffee in the morning. I started noticing things that didn't make sense before. Laura separated our bank accounts 6 months ago. Said it was easier for budgeting. She changed her phone passcode around then too. Work security, she claimed. But now I'm thinking about how protective she became. How she'd take it into the bathroom. How she started putting it face down on tables. I went back to the house when she was at work to pick up my things. The refrigerator calendar had blocked out dates over recent months. Weekend trips, she said, were work conferences. I checked her company website. Those conferences didn't exist on those dates. I'm not trying to play detective. I'm not even sure why it matters now. The divorce is already filed, but I think she was seeing someone else. Maybe one of her co-workers. The timeline would make sense with when everything started shifting between us. Then yesterday, something happened that changed everything. My dad's estate attorney called. His name is Paul Hendricks, and he's been Dad's lawyer for over 20 years. He asked if I could come in for a meeting. Said there were some details about the estate we needed to discuss in person. I went in this morning. Paul's office is in one of those old downtown buildings with dark wood paneling and law books on shelves that look like nobody's touched them in decades. He offered me coffee and then got straight to it. Your father updated his estate plan 18 months ago, Paul said. He was very specific about the timing and the reasoning. He told me he'd noticed changes in your marriage and wanted to make sure certain protections were in place. 18 months ago. That was right when Laura started pushing harder about my career. When the comments from her friends started getting more pointed. When she began making jokes about being the breadwinner that didn't sound like jokes. Paul pulled out this thick folder. Your father left you a letter. I'm required to give you this before we discuss the estate details. He wanted you to read it first. The letter is sealed. It's sitting on my mom's kitchen table right now. I haven't opened it yet. I don't know why I'm scared to read it. Maybe because once I open it, Dad really is gone. Or maybe because I'm afraid of what it's going to say about my marriage, about Laura, about how blind I was. Paul also explained something about the prenup that I didn't fully understand when we signed it. There's a clause that specifically protects inheritances and trust distributions as separate property. At the time, I thought that was just standard legal language. Now Paul's telling me my dad designed it that way on purpose. Your father was very clear, Paul said. He wanted to make sure that regardless of what happened in your marriage, his estate would be protected for you. Only you. I asked Paul directly. Did my dad know this was coming? The divorce? Paul chose his words carefully. Your father was a very observant man. He didn't tell me he expected divorce specifically, but he wanted to prepare for the possibility. He said if he was wrong, the protections wouldn't matter. But if he was right, they'd matter a great deal. I still don't know what assets Dad actually had. Paul said we'd need another meeting to go through everything in detail. He kept using phrases like complex holdings and structured distributions, which sound like lawyer speak for something bigger than I expected. The thing is, my dad lived simply. A small ranch house paid off decades ago. A 20-year-old truck he maintained himself. We never took fancy vacations or had expensive things. I assumed he'd saved some money for retirement, but nothing significant. Now I'm not sure what to think. Laura texted me last night. First real message since the memorial. We should talk about the house lease. Also need to discuss the car situation. Very practical. Very efficient. The same tone she uses in her work emails. I didn't respond yet. I keep thinking about Paul's words. Your father prepared for the possibility. What did Dad see that I was too close to notice? And what exactly was he protecting me from? The sealed letter is still sitting there. Maybe tonight I'll finally open it. Update 2. I had the estate meeting with Paul yesterday. I'm still processing everything. My mom came with me for support, which was good because halfway through I stopped being able to focus on what Paul was saying. Here's what I learned. My dad wasn't just comfortable financially, he was wealthy, really wealthy. And I had no idea. The full picture is complicated, but basically Dad had been quietly investing for 40 years. He owned minority stakes in 3 different self-storage facilities across Ohio. He had a substantial portfolio of index funds and bonds. He was a limited partner in a private logistics venture that apparently does very well. Plus real estate holdings I didn't know about and cash reserves that made my eyes water. Paul walked me through the numbers twice because I didn't believe him the first time. After estate taxes and fees, which Dad structured the plan to handle efficiently, the total estate value is approximately $6.3 million. I had to ask him to repeat that number. $6.3 million. My dad, who drove the same truck for 2 decades and complained about the price of coffee, had $6.3 million. But here's the bigger twist. I don't just get a check for $6 million. That's not how Dad set this up. He created an irrevocable trust with very specific terms. The assets go into the trust, and I receive distributions over time, not a lump sum. Paul explained this was for tax optimization, but also for protection. The trust language has what Paul called anti-spousal claim provisions. Basically, the way it's written and the way the prenup is structured, Laura has zero claim to any of this money. Not the inheritance, not the trust distributions, nothing. Even if we were still married, this would be completely separate property. And there's another detail. The trust doesn't fully activate until after the divorce is finalized. Dad built in a waiting period. If we reconciled, the trust would stay dormant for another year. Paul said this was intentional. My father wanted to make sure no one could manipulate me into staying in a marriage just to access the money. That's when Paul handed me the letter. I read it right there in his office. My mom held my hand while I read it. I'm not going to share the whole thing because it's private, but I'll tell you the parts that matter. Dad wrote that he'd watched Laura measure my worth by my salary and my title. He saw how she looked at her friends' husbands who made more money, who had bigger positions, who drove nicer cars. He noticed how she started treating my work with kids like it was a phase I needed to grow out of instead of a calling I'd chosen. Your work matters, he wrote. You're shaping young people during the hardest years of their lives. That has value beyond any dollar amount, and I'm proud of the man you've become. Don't let anyone tell you your worth is measured by your paycheck. Then he got to the hard part. If someone rushes you out the door, don't chase them. People who love you don't serve divorce papers at funerals. They don't hand you life-changing documents when you're at your lowest point. That's not love. That's strategy. I lost it. Just completely broke down crying in Paul's office. Because my dad knew. He saw what was happening and he didn't say anything directly because he knew I had to figure it out myself. But he built this safety net, this firewall, not as a trap for Laura, but as protection for me. Paul let me take a minute. Then he said something that made everything click into place. Your father didn't set this up to punish anyone. He set it up because he loved you and wanted to make sure that no matter what happened, you'd be okay. You could keep doing the work you love without financial pressure. You could make decisions based on what's right, not what pays the bills. I drove home from that meeting in a daze. Mom made dinner and we didn't talk about any of it. I just needed to sit with it all. Then this morning I got a call from Laura. Her tone was different, softer. She asked if we could meet for coffee. Said she'd been thinking about things, that maybe we'd both been hasty. That grief makes people do things they regret. I asked her directly, why now? Why are you calling me 2 weeks after handing me divorce papers at my father's funeral? She stumbled through some answer about reflection, about missing what we had, about maybe working on things. I didn't tell her about the estate, but something had leaked. Small-town legal circles talk. Laura kept talking. I think we rushed into this. You were grieving and I should have been more sensitive. Maybe we should slow down. Try counseling first. 2 weeks ago, she handed me papers and told me it was the cleanest timing we'd ever get. Now she wants counseling. I told her I needed to think about it and ended the call. Then I called Paul. What happens if we reconcile? He was quiet for a moment. Then, the trust goes dormant. You'd still have your inheritance, but the protective structures wouldn't fully activate for another year. And Kyle? Your father anticipated this exact scenario. He called it emotional leverage. He blocked it. Laura filed something with the court yesterday. A motion to delay the finalization. She's also been texting more, asking about my day, saying she saw something that reminded her of me, using the pet name she hadn't used in over a year. My dad saw this coming. He built protections for this exact situation. And now I have to decide what to do. Final update. The divorce was finalized last week. I met Laura one last time to sign the final paperwork and confirm everything was in order. She asked if we could talk after, so we went to a coffee shop near the courthouse. She tried one more time. We had good times, she said. 3 years together. That meant something. You're making a huge mistake. I stayed calm. I've learned that from working with middle schoolers. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is just state facts without emotion. You prepared divorce papers before my father's memorial, I said. You didn't file them after a fight. You didn't bring them up during an argument. You had them ready and waiting. Then you chose the day of his funeral to serve them because you knew I'd be too emotionally exhausted to fight back. She started to interrupt, but I kept going. 2 weeks ago, you told me this was the cleanest timing we'd ever get. You wanted me out of the house by the end of the month. You had our finances separated. You'd already planned your exit. But then something changed, and suddenly you wanted counseling. Suddenly you thought we were rushing. The only thing that changed was information about my father's estate. Laura's face went hard. Your father was controlling. This whole thing is unfair. He manipulated you. He didn't control you, I said. He protected me from you. There's a difference. She left angry. I haven't heard from her since. The divorce is done. The trust activated properly. Laura gets nothing from my father's estate. The prenup held up exactly the way Dad designed it. Paul said it was one of the most airtight estate plans he'd ever seen. But here's what matters more than the money. I'm still working as a school counselor. I still make $55,000 a year. The difference is, now it's my choice. I'm not staying because I'm trapped. I'm staying because this is the work I want to do. I bought a small house, 3 bedrooms, paid off my student loans and car, set up a college fund for my nephew, started therapy because processing grief and divorce together is harder than expected. The rest mostly stays in the trust. I take distributions Paul recommends. I still pack my lunch, still drive a normal car. I live like a counselor who makes $55,000 because that's who I am. But I did do one thing with the money that I think Dad would have liked. I started a small scholarship fund for students in my school district. Kids who want to go into education or counseling or social work. Careers that matter but don't pay much. It's not a huge program. Maybe 3 or 4 scholarships a year. But it's something real and it helps. Laura is still at her marketing job. Her reputation took a hit though. Her friends noticed how fast she backpedaled when word got out. People talk. I don't wish her harm, just wish her well somewhere far from me. I opened Dad's letter again last week. There's a line near the end I didn't fully understand the first time. Kyle, you've spent years trying to be enough for someone who kept moving the goalpost. At some point, you have to realize the problem isn't your aim. It's that they never intended for you to reach the target. I think I get it now. Laura didn't want me to earn more money or get a better title. She wanted to feel superior. She needed me to be less so she could be more. And nothing I did was ever going to change that dynamic. I didn't win the marriage. I didn't even really win the divorce. But I finally stopped negotiating my worth. I stopped trying to convince someone that I was enough. And that feels like the real inheritance my father left me, not the money, the permission to stop shrinking myself to fit someone else's requirements. My students don't know about any of this. They just know Mr. Walker who listens to their problems and helps them figure out the hard stuff, and sometimes brings in donuts on Friday. That's enough. That's actually more than enough. Last week I was walking to my car after school, and I heard that voice again, the one I'd been hearing since the memorial. If someone rushes you, they're hiding something. But this time I heard the rest of it, the part Dad never had to say out loud because he knew I'd figure it out eventually. If someone rushes you, they're hiding something. But if someone builds you a safety net without telling you, they're hiding something too. They're hiding love so deep they'd rather you think they're just being practical than make you feel beholden. They're hiding the fact that they saw you were drowning and threw you a life preserver disguised as legal paperwork. I miss my dad every day. But I also feel him in the house I was able to buy. In the student scholarship fund with his name on it. In the way I can walk into work without that crushing anxiety about money. In the fact that I didn't have to choose between my calling and my survival. Some people inherit money. I inherited protection. I inherited the knowledge that my father saw me clearly, valued me correctly, and loved me enough to plan for disasters I couldn't see coming. That's worth more than $6.3 million. Though I have to admit, having the $6.3 million doesn't hurt either.